These are strange times. People have to go in quarantine for a disease that only has a mortality rate of 1%. So, one of the most common questions I hear these days is,
what's all that fuss about? This is a disease with a mortality rate of just around 1%. Why all these precautions? It's true, COVID-19 has a mortality rate of just around 1%. 80% of cases are mild or moderate. It's counterintuitive, but a seemingly innocuous disease like COVID-19 has more power to disrupt our society than more lethal diseases like SARS or Ebola, which could be contained much more easily than COVID-19. There are two sets of tools available to fight an epidemic: containment tools and mitigation tools. Containment tools are used at the start of an outbreak to turn an outbreak that could look like this into something that looks more like this. Containment basically means tracking the dissemination of a disease by identifying infected cases and their contacts and to subsequently isolate or quarantine them. So when this guy gets sick, he gets quarantined. All his contacts are identified, contacted, and are also quarantined such that they, should they also be infected, cannot infect anyone else. Containment is especially effective at the beginning of an epidemic, where there are few cases and the work required to track down these cases and contacts is humanly possible. Contact tracing is hard work. The European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, which is the European Union's equivalent of the CDC, estimated that it would take about 100 person-hours of work to trace the contacts of each confirmed case of COVID-19. So let's do the math. One case takes 100 hours. 10 cases would require 1,000 hours of work, assuming a 50-hour work week. This would mean that 20 public health workers would be needed to finish contact tracing within 1 week. With 100 cases, it would take 10,000 hours of work, or 200 public health workers. And with 1,000 cases, we would need 100,000 hours of work, or 2,000 public health workers to track down contacts within 1 week. And we can't take more than 1 week if we want to contain the epidemic fast. Now, you can easily see that containment, if done the old-school way, where a public health official sits down with a case to identify contacts and to then call them up and inform them to self-quarantine, quickly becomes impossible. So when containment no longer works, mitigation is put into place. That's basically what we have right now, with schools being closed, people working from home, public events being canceled, and so forth. Mitigation is much more disruptive for society and the economy than containment. Containment works best when each case is traceable to another case, when the chain of transmission can be documented. So, what should happen in an ideal world for a chain of transmission to be traceable and therefore breakable? Well, first of all, cases should be easily identifiable, such that we can find all of them. Now, I know this might sound harsh, but in order to find all cases, it's helpful if they get sick. And I don't mean a little sick, but sick enough that they'll seek medical attention. Mild disease or even asymptomatic disease is the enemy of containment because we can only identify a proportion of the diseased. The second thing that's important for containment to work is that cases should ideally be infectious only when they experience symptoms. So guy gets sick, becomes infectious, immediately seeks medical attention, is diagnosed, bang, into isolation, chain of transmission broken. SARS and Ebola were kind of like that. They were much more severe diseases with case fatality rates of around 10 and 80% respectively. But the infectious and symptomatic periods coincided, which made it much easier to contain them. Again, person gets infected with SARS, incubation period starts during which he's not infectious, gets very sick, becomes infectious, is immediately identified, removed from the population, can't infect anyone else, transmission chain interrupted. Perfect containment scenario. Now, along comes little SARS-CoV-2, the virus causing COVID-19, and says, "Hey, I'm really not that bad. I just kill around 1% of y'all. Some of you won't even get sick. I'm really much nicer than these guys causing SARS and Ebola. Yeah, but that's the whole freaking problem. You are too mild to cause significant or even severe disease in most of us, and you're starting to be infectious 2 days before symptom onset. You, SARS-CoV-2, are a containment nightmare. Think of it this way. We're all riding the COVID train. Some of us are infected, most are not. Along comes the containment tunnel. The symptomatic cases are too big for the tunnel. They and their contacts are removed from the train and isolated, so they can't infect anyone else. But some cases are less severe because they might just have a bit of a sore throat or a light cough. Hell, some even are asymptomatic, so they come right along and happily walk around the train, infecting 2 to 3 other fellow travelers each. Some of the asymptomatic folks become symptomatic as the train passes through the tunnel and are picked and removed by the containment police. But up until that point, they were strolling around infecting others. From the containment police's perspective, these mild or asymptomatic passengers are the problem. But to us, regular people outside the containment police force, they're the good news because they're the ones that make the mortality or case fatality rate so low. As we know by now, case fatality rate in percent equals number of deaths divided by number of cases times 100. So the folks with mild or asymptomatic disease make the cases go up, but since they don't die, they don't make deaths go up, which makes the case fatality rate or mortality go down. So in a nutshell, SARS-CoV-2 has played a nasty trick on us. He tricked us into thinking that he's really not that bad after all, while at the same time he created his own growing army of mild and asymptomatic cases that's actually responsible for ever more severe and critical cases. So what's the way out of this dilemma? How can we reduce mitigation and get back into containment so we can restart the economy, send our kids back to school, and leave our houses again? The only way we can get containment to work is with the help of technology. It's not humanly possible to track down and isolate all cases and their contacts. But technology can do so. As Christoph Fraser and co-workers from Oxford University showed, a contact tracing app which builds a memory of proximity contacts and immediately notifies contacts of positive cases can achieve epidemic control if used by enough people. Then the authors continue and say that epidemics could be contained without the need for mass quarantines, known as lockdowns, that are harmful to society. So there you have it. Apps like these will become a critical tool for getting us out of this mitigation/lockdown situation that we're in right now. That's it for now. If you want to improve your understanding of epidemiology, make sure to register for a free Medmastery trial account and attend our Epidemiology Essentials course. We've just opened it up to trial users due to the huge demand. So stay safe and talk soon.